force, fortitude, strength, and even lust. This card can be thought of as the female magician and has been referred to in many ways, but retains an esoteric meaning of unity. Hello, I'm Michael J. Auger, creator of the Allcento Tarot, and today let's explore the 11th card of the Tarot's Major Arcana. Fortitude is the first card in the second cycle of 10, and also represents the second of the 7 virtues. In a previous episode, I discussed the first virtue, justice, and in future episodes, I'll discuss others. However, with the virtue of fortitude, we are granted divine strength, and the secret is, this strength is not dominance over others, but rather empathy and compassion that unites us all. There's a number of Visconti-Sforza decks, but none have survived complete with all their cards. However, we are fortunate enough to have different versions of some of the cards, and Fortitude is one of these. The Madrone, also known as the Carrie Yale deck, is considered to be the earliest version and depicts a maiden taming a lion. The lion represents our basic instincts and wild passions, while the maiden is a symbol of our intelligence and reason. It's only because the lion and maiden are united in a bond of mutual trust and love that the maiden is able to dominate the lion with her bare hands, without any fear or hesitation. The lion can be seen as our lower nature, which we have progressed far enough on our journey to have mastery over. This theme of unity is also expressed in the Bergamo, also known as the Pierpont Morgan deck. This version of the card depicts a strong man wielding a club with a wild animal crouched down in front of him. Some have interpreted this as a depiction of Heracles fighting a lion. However, Stuart Kaplan, the founder of US Game Systems Incorporated and the author of the Encyclopedia of the Tarot, suggests that both the man and the animal appear poised for battle against a common unseen enemy. The lion seems ready to pounce on command, and on close examination, both man and beast are intently staring in the same direction with a similar expression. We are now being tested, but with the grace of fortitude, our higher and lower nature are able to work together, united. I appreciate both Visconti versions, but I'm partial to the Madrone, which is the scene also depicted in early Marseille-style versions of this card. The lion allows the maiden to dominate because they are united in a bond of love. If you view the tarot in repeating patterns of 10, this 11th triumph card is the second cycle of 1. And similar to card 1, the magician, there's a lamescate hidden in this maiden's hat. This symbol of infinity, once again, represents the unification of everything with a nice looping bow. In some of the early depictions of this card, like the so-called Charles VI deck, Fortitude is seen with a polygonal halo, which indicates her as an allegorical figure. And instead of a lion, alternate symbolism for this virtue is a broken column, as a reference to the biblical tales of Samson. Samson may seem an unlikely symbol for a moral virtue, as he was portrayed as an arrogant, impulsive man who used his supernatural strength to get in and out of trouble with the local oppressors known as the Philistines. However, after he is betrayed and loses his strength, he's captured by the Philistines, blinded, and put to work as a slave. Despite losing his freedom, dignity, and eyesight, he does not lose his faith. At a party to celebrate his defeat, Samson calls out to God for strength. God answers his prayer, and with his strength returned, Samson breaks the 2 central pillars of the temple, which then collapses, killing 3,000 Philistine enemies, as well as Samson. Not exactly a happy ending, but fortitude is not always about winning. For Samson, it was the grace of mental strength to end his torment and find peace. The depiction of this card by Oswald Wirth returns to a Marseille-style depiction of a maiden with lamescate and hat easily opening the jaws of a raging lion. Wirth saw this maiden of strength echoing the magician, but on a higher level. He saw the magician as having ultimate potential, but having instructed and disciplined himself as an initiate of the masculine, whereas he explained that the 11th arcana represents the ideal, which is possible to attain if we dominate our selfish tendencies and tame violence with gentleness. Fortitude comes from the Latin word fortis, meaning strong. However, this is less about physical power and more of a mental strength. Moving forward in time, the version of this card created by Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith follows the numbering used by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which swaps justice, another of the virtues that is usually number 8, with fortitude or strength, card 11. In a different video, I explained the reason for this change was so that strength could link with Leo and maintain astrological order. But I personally prefer decks like the Minchiati that have separate cards for the zodiac signs. That being said, this version continues the maiden and lion theme, although instead of opening the jaws of the lion, here Waite describes her as closing them. Also, the lamescate is not hidden in a hat, but clearly indicated above the maiden's head like a halo. The idea for these modifications appears to have come from Eliphas Levi. Also, Smith adds a garland of flowers to further symbolize the unity of the maiden and the lion. The Thoth Tarot deck, created by Aleister Crowley and Lady Frida Harris, returns to the number 11. However, the title is adjusted to Lust, and the imagery is radically changed. The maiden is reimagined as the Scarlet Woman, and the lion is transformed into the 7-headed beast of the apocalypse, who she rides in a state of sexual ecstasy as it tramples over the saints of the Catholic Church. With her left hand, this whore of Babylon holds reins that represent the passion that unite her with the beast. The Golden Dawn corresponds this card with the Hebrew letter Teth, which means serpent, and the tail of this beast is a serpent. Using gematria, the Hebrew words for love, akad, and unity, Abba, added together equal 13. And there are 13 rays of light that emanate from the serpent's head. In the Book of the Law, Crowley proclaims there is no bond that can unite the divided but love. All else is a curse. In her right hand, the woman holds up the Holy Grail that is aflame with love and death. Crowley describes the energy of this card as primitive and more than a little mad, but completely independent from criticism and reason. At the top of this card can be seen an emblem of the new light with 10 circular emanations representing the unordered, energized Sephiroth of the Tree of Life. Encircling this are 10 horns of the beast, being sent out in every direction to both destroy and recreate the world. It's all intentionally shocking and extreme, but that's Crowley for you. Reining things back a bit, here's the version of this card from the Allcento Tarot. We return to more traditional symbolism of a maiden pure of heart who gently holds open the jaws of a lion. Similar to the magician, her hat contains the lamescate, and there is a daisy chain of flowers that connect her with the lion. The lion could easily break this with the slightest effort, but he doesn't because they're united by a bond of love, which is the strongest force. A 7-pointed halo signifies fortitude as a virtue, and she embodies the Hermetic principle of correspondence, which states that the spiritual is reflected by the material, just as the material is reflected by the spiritual. She wears a pendant of the moon that balances the sun shining above, and represents a union of opposites. In the background, a palm tree can be seen bending in the wind. A tree that resists too firmly will break. However, by bending with the wind, it will survive. Also in the background, a rock can be seen in the flowing river that also represents resilience and the strength to endure experiences both good and bad. River rocks allow the flow of water to course over them, and although they are shaped and smoothed by the currents of life, they remain strong and persevere. Life isn't always easy, but we must carry on and be not afraid. Fortitude is the ability to choose to do what is right, even when our instincts tell us to run away in fear. The greatest strength of all is love. And I'd love for you to visit my website, offbeatartwork.com, where you can find out more about me and the Allcento Tarot. And also, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment to share your support. And until next time, brightest blessings on your spiritual journey.